Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We'll wait a couple more minutes.
I know a couple folks are at the ASB budget.
Yeah.
I was rearranging all of our different, technology pieces, which means that the computer I'm looking at you guys is actually way down here. I'm gonna have to change that. Give me a minute.
I'm wondering if we can get someone to take some notes just on feedback so we can make sure we incorporate it. I don't know who else is joining. Just want to make sure we capture everything.
Did you guys all stay up late last night hoping you'd actually get some results?
I did. Tired.
Yeah, at some level, it's like, staying up late is not going to help anything.
Right.
How many days are you prepared to not sleep?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm happy to jot some notes down, Amy, as we go.
I'm sorry, I was looking to see who else would join, but
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
I can keep some notes. I can always watch the video too. It's recording,
Okay.
right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll make sure we get it all.
Yeah, this was like, pretty last minute, so I wasn't expecting a full crew tonight. We'll give it like maybe one more minute and then we can get started.
Sounds good. I like your background there, Roger. That must be AMS on a dry day. I don't see any buckets behind you.
Yeah, this is this week. Looks good in there, doesn't it? Look how shiny the
Those
floor
floors
is.
are gleaming.
You want it to look really nice. I want all of us to have backgrounds where it looks pretty bad.
No, I
Really
know.
shiny.
But it's my job to maintain what we have, regardless of what we have.
I know.
It looks great.
They're doing a nice job over there.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, I live in an old house, and the spot where we're now kind of housing our computer is in our most slanted of rooms. So if I take my feet off the ground and start just like sliding away, you'll know what's going on.
All right. Let's see. Good, we have a few attendees. All right, I'd say we get started. I don't want to make this too long a meeting because I know it's been a long week already and we already had a task force meeting before this and lots going on the with budget committees and board meetings. So I'll just jump right in. So I'll call to the meeting to order at 6:04. And basically this was a great idea of Shannon's to just have a touch base post our presentation to just try to get some feedback from all of us and try to make sure that we're level set going forward next week when we'll be attending the Amherst School Board meeting. So that's really the primary purpose. I did have some communication with the Amherst board, so we're all set. I have a few notes to share on what she's suggesting we cover. I have an email out to the Mont Vernon chair. Their meeting is on the 12th, so I don't have confirmation that we're on that agenda. Do you happen to know, Adam?
I'm sorry, I was answering an email.
Oh, that's okay. Did Sarah happen to mention if she was looking to add JFAC to the agenda for next Thursday, the 12th?
I don't know. I'm meeting with her on Friday morning to go through that, so I'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys could just let us know, just because I know I believe they're in contract negotiations with the Amherst School District. So there'll be some, certainly a building project will potentially have an effect on, on their negotiations and their thought process. So I guess first off, I did put out a quick little agenda today. Just wanted to sort of debrief on the SAU board meeting. And then mention that I started a Google Sheet that I shared with everybody on the committee, as well as the Amherst School Board members, to add questions. And then we'll definitely want to populate answers in there prior to the board meeting. And Adam, I know I think you answered them on an email. I haven't transferred those over to the Google Sheet, but we should probably look to do that.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll stop yapping. So first up, I guess feedback on the presentation. Any thoughts on that? And Shannon's going to jot down some notes. And just feel free to talk. We're a small group.
Yeah, no, I think it went really well. My concern about it is that it was so high level that I think it left out all the hard work that's gone into it. I think it left out the fact that we had gotten together and drilled down costs and that we had thought about different things. That's my concern, is that it just came in such a high level, because we knew who we were, the people who were in the SAU meeting already knew about it. And those people had already been clued into JFAC. I'm a little concerned that these are some of the first times that our residents are hearing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they haven't watched these JFAC meetings that have been happening for months, then all of a sudden they're hearing $100 million and that's all they're hearing. And I think we all had huge sticker shock when we first were going through this, when we first saw these numbers. I think that's important for us to be able to figure out how to convey at our next board meetings that we go to.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because we had concerns about the costs, and we went, and dug back in, and we're able to make some reductions. But even with those reductions, it feels like a very scary number.
A lot of money. And
yeah.
I think that's the other part of this that feels a little icky to me, is that people aren't sounding excited when we talk about our facilities, even on our boards. And sometimes in this meeting, it feels like we're like, oh, this is so hard. And I'm like waiting for someone to say, we need to do this. And this is the reason we need to do it. And we saw Shannon and Brian's video last year. And when we watched that video last year, all of a sudden we had people coming out and saying, oh my gosh, I didn't realize those were the conditions. Yes, we need to do these things. And instead of hearing that, I'm just hearing, and I didn't mean this about what you just said, Amy. I just mean like in general.
Yeah,
I'm just hearing so
that's
much,
okay.
like, oh, and it's like, oh my gosh, it is, but at the same time, like, COVID someday will be a thing that we're living with. And 3 years from now, we're still going to need somewhere to put our students, and they're all going to be there, God willing. Like, we're putting them all back in the building. This isn't like, oh, we're just going to live with 15-person classes and we're just going to use the space we have and it's never going to be a crunch again. It just isn't. And I worry that all of that is getting lost in the moment. And I know all the other boards, I look at the attendees for this, and obviously all the board members aren't on it. But I think it's important for us to be able to convey this opinion at their board meetings, even though usually those board meetings are a little more formal and this feels a little less formal. I think we need to be able to figure out how to do that. And I don't necessarily know how to. I just think we need to.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think, when you're in these committee meetings, you can sometimes get lost, in the forest for the trees. And we're so focused on all the details and getting everything right for the presentation, we might be missing the fact, the main reason or the main why of what this is all about. So I think that's a really good constructive criticism and something that we should bring forward when we get to the individual board meetings. And they certainly, the Amherst School Board is keenly aware of the conditions of the schools, but I think you're right. It's important for us to make sure that is put forth front and center, because that is why we're doing this, or is one of the main reasons, that and the enrollment issue. So.
Knowing the boards, who is best to deliver the messages to the community or the boards, and maybe two different people? I know when we did our Salem projects, we actually thought about who is the best person to deliver this. For the community this last round, they chose a school board member that was pretty well respected. For the high school, they actually had a community member come in and present them, do the biggest sell. You guys know your community best, but for each group, who is the best person to present as far as who they trust and who's going to deliver the right message?
Well, first we have to get, present to the board and have them agree that this is something that they want to put forth. And then after that, I think it's a decision that has to be made about, how that gets presented. I think, I don't know, Adam will have to correct me, but I'm not sure if community members are allowed to make presentations at the public hearing and deliberative,
Yeah, they
or
can.
not. They can. Okay.
It's a board presentation. They can have anybody they want make the presentation.
Okay.
I recall though that in 2018, Brian Coogan presented at the public hearing, but when he tried to present at the deliberative, the moderator did not allow that. It was not keen on that. I can't remember if he let it slide or not, but I'm not sure.
That's a good point. And it is the
So-
moderator gets to decide.
Yeah,
what-
so I don't know if you remember that, but the first time the A&E fees went on a warrant article, he had presented at the public hearing and then was planning to do the same presentation at deliberative. And
Yeah, you're right.
So let's do some research on that and find out if there are actual rules or if it's just preference, or and just so that we're well prepared, so we don't get caught off guard.
In the short term, who is presenting at the school board meeting for Amherst? Is it the same?
Yeah.
Same?
Yeah. Yeah.
What about, you said potentially there's a meeting on the 12th?
There's potential, yes, there is a Mount Vernon School Board meeting, and I had heard from a Mount Vernon School Board member that he definitely wanted us to present. I just don't know if we're on the agenda for that particular meeting night. So Adam's going to clarify with the chair.
I personally am not available that night, but I mean, I think other
Okay.
people can cover my spot, or Ann can also cover my spot if you'd like.
Okay, all right. So yeah, the Amherst chair, suggested an abbreviated presentation focusing on the pros and cons of the three options, giving some more details on the bonding and building costs, and then having a Q&A.
Sounds
So
pretty,
those-
right?
What's
Like,
that?
it
Easy.
sounds pretty basic, like what we
Yeah.
should, we got that, right?
yeah,
think-
so I think
I've got this in you guys.
Sure.
I think Victoria, to your point about the SAU meeting and it being high level, it was high level. It was also a very long meeting, and we knew that going in, that they had a really full agenda. This is a really busy time in a regular year. In a pandemic year, there's even more to talk about. So I think that, the energy that you're talking about us bringing to the presentation definitely needs to be stepped up. I think that meeting being so long, that was a little challenging. And I think that at the Amherst School Board meeting, when we're really drilling down, to me, an abbreviated presentation, we don't need to present the survey results. We've done that. We've talked a little bit about existing conditions, but I still think there's a place for existing conditions and sort of the history of our buildings, which we as a committee have done a lot of work on, but we haven't necessarily shared that out. So, I don't know how you guys feel. I feel like there's some value in just saying, over the last 20, 30 years, these are all the different times that an upper elementary or an elementary school has been placed on the ballot. It hasn't passed. We've done the Band-Aid, but we keep coming back to it, right? Like every time we keep coming back to, we just don't have the space we need. And each time it just gets more, it just costs more money every time that, the longer we push it off, the more money it costs. And so to me, that's what's compelling really, is at some point we have to really deal with these buildings in a way that's meaningful and lasting, and not just that Band-Aid solution. So I don't know if that's valuable. I started playing around with the what Brian had shared on the Slack a couple days ago, putting that into a slide that I can share out before next week, and we can talk about. And then addressing some of those, financial questions that the community has that are in the Google sheet that you sent out, I think will be important for that meeting.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. All of that. And I did ask the chair to send out an email to board members to ask them to provide questions to that Google sheet. So she asked them to do it by midweek. So it's a busy week, but I'll be taking a look at those questions and filling them in if it looks like it's your area of expertise, so that we can have those done prior to the meeting.
So they have the same Google sheet, the board
I
does?
shared it with them. Yep.
Okay, so we should be watching that to see if.
Yep. I did see some additional questions.
Okay.
I'm not sure who they came in from, but yes, they do have that. So
Okay.
I feel like that's a good way to get questions answered ahead of time so that we're prepared for the discussion. So, and I'd like to do that for Mount Vernon as well. Once we know, and then for Sauhegan later in the month. So I didn't share it with them. We can share it with them once we're done. I just didn't want us to be overwhelmed with questions. So.
Shannon, when you mentioned, sorry, go ahead, Lance.
As far as answering, I've been answering the question just via email to you guys. Do you want me to type them into Google Sheets? I don't, if the school board's seeing them, I didn't want to type in a draft answer if someone
Okay.
wants that answer first, but I just, for the questions that I can answer, I can email
That's
them to
fine.
whoever's.
That's okay, and I can transfer them over.
Okay.
That's fine. I'll grab yours, Adam, as well. That's fine.
So something I was going to mention, when Shannon was talking about how we've done this as a town, over 20 years, we've done it multiple times. When I look through the data, we all know that our enrollment used to be higher. And I think that's something that we need to make sure that we address with the school boards. I understand that we're still in the same space crunch, even though our numbers are higher. We don't have portables. We've chosen to bring special ed services in-house for a variety of reasons. That number one, that it's the right thing to do. Number two, that there's cost savings there. But we're finding ourselves needing some space. So I think we need to figure out how to share that story. Like, I know the story, but how are we sharing that with not only with the board, but with the people who are watching the board meeting, the residents? Because it is, you look at the enrollment, if you look at enrollment numbers, it is different. So we need to explain how the buildings are being used differently. And I don't know if there's something special that our district knows about how we use the buildings that we should be able to mention or not. But
yeah, I'm wondering, Adam, if we need to bring Meg in just to fill that knowledge gap in, because this was really a lot of work done on her part to reorganize the special ed program for a lot of reasons that everybody, agreed with and bought into a while back, but it does have an impact on the space.
Yeah, I think we can just highlight the number of classrooms that are dedicated to our special education services that weren't there before. And then
Mhm.
make sure we remind people how much money we've saved by having those programs in-house as well at the same time. So it doesn't look like we're trying to stack the school in some way, right?
I know that there's stuff that was written about it because I remember hearing lots of presentations. Does Meg have like a little high level executive summary or something on what was done and it doesn't have to be specific dollar savings, but just some high level bullets that we can bring forth.
Yeah, she had that. She's presented that in the past during
Yeah.
budget. I
Would
can
she be able to grab something from there and send it over to us? I think that would be helpful. That's a good point, Victoria.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We talked a lot about that in 2018. That was definitely on the radar, and I don't think we ever really circled back to it.
Yeah. That's good.
I'm gonna stick that in the Google Sheet. Will that help everyone remember that that's a
That will
question?
help.
Can I just put everything there?
That's a good repository for
Yeah,
all of our
okay.
random thoughts and.
Yep.
Okay. John, I see you're on. Would you mind sharing your any thoughts or feedback on our presentation and anything else you'd like to add? Your voice is definitely important, and we
Well,
would love to hear you.
I'm sorry to say I missed the beginning of the presentation. I was dealing with a situation in my house. But I looked over the package, and I could always watch the video if you want me to opine on it that badly. I thought it was pretty well put together, but the fundamental issue is, are the school boards going to have the necessary attributes to go to the voters and say, we need a big bucket of money, and here's why. And here's what happens if we don't get it, here's what happens if we do. Because this committee can talk to architects and put budgets together and do all that good stuff. I think some cost benefit analyses would be a useful thing to show the school board. But at the end of the day, they have to have the courage to ask the voters for a big pot of money. And in Amherst's case, they're going to ask for more teachers as well to fill up all those classrooms that they're asking for. So the schools, Amherst School Board in particular, has a credibility problem with the voters. They know that the cost per pupil is high in both Amherst and Sohegan. And in order to get any money out of the voters, I think the school boards are going to have to make a serious commitment to getting their costs under control. And I mean, we can argue about what they have to do, but I think Micah Killian a year or two ago put a whole bunch of stuff out on Facebook that was his assessment of what the problems were. And the number one problem for Amherst is the school contract with the teachers is way too high. They're just too well paid for what they do. And some previous school board just lost sight of the fact that they're also guardians of the taxpayers' money and gave them everything they asked for, to the point where the Amherst school teachers contract became the template for every teachers union in the state. That alone tells you that it was too high. Sohegan's problems is kind of a different thing. They started out as a CES school, and they've now migrated into a hybrid of CES and a standard high school. They've still got more overhead than a standard high school or a CES school, and they need to fix that. Their enrollment's down 300-400 students. They have not reduced their headcount of teaching and administrative staff proportionately, and they've got overhead from two different educational models. Is there the will to fix that? I don't know. But without simultaneously offering the voters a reason to believe that the cost of educating people in this town is coming down, so as to accommodate partially the $3 per thousand increase that you're asking for, I don't think you're ever going to get it. They don't care if you got 25 kids in a classroom. They're not going to do it. Not if we keep having the operating cost high and also throwing this giant capital cost. It's that simple. They'll say no. They'll keep saying no until a court order requires them to do it.
John, what do you think would be a good show of faith? Do you have an idea of what you think it should be?
It is not for me to advise the school board on what they should do with their voters, their separately elected body. If the school boards agree that those are the two major centers of gravity of the problem, then they ought to say, here's the problem, and here's how we commit to fixing it over the next 5 years, 7 years, however long it takes. Amherst problem, most recent self-inflicted wound, was when they agreed to the new contract after 2 years with no contract, they agreed to back cost of living increases in steps. That added $1 million to the next year's worth of salary. That was an insane thing to do. That meant the teachers didn't pay any price at all for holding out for 2 years. They just had to wait a little extra time to get the money. That was dumb. I'm sorry. Hiring a lawyer who knows how to negotiate a real contract would be a good step in the right direction. But I mean, you're not going to tell the teachers they're going to have to take a 25% pay cut or lose their job. That's just not going to happen. So I don't know how Amherst gets out from under that contract, but that has got to be a focus of the board. They need to have lower cost teachers somehow. Sohegan, lots of people have had lots of opinions about Sohegan. But again, if they decide they want to be a regular old high school, a world-class good high school, offering advanced placement programs and all the rest of that, then do that. And then strip out all the CES overhead that's left and get rid of it. And again, I commit to do that over a 2-year, 3-year, whatever. But you have to say, yes, we have a problem. We know we have a problem. We've talked about around the problem in the past, but here's how we can show you we're getting serious about it. And here's an X year plan to get to wherever we need to be and hold us to it. Do the school boards want to do that in addition to dealing with this capital project? I don't know. I'm not the one who has to stand up there and convince the voters to give me money. I have to do that for the town, but that's a separate issue. So I can't give them advice because I'm not going to be the one taking fire, whatever they do. You tell the teachers in the Amherst school that a deliberate strategy is going to be to reduce their compensation relative to their peers over the next several years. You should expect them to be real unhappy about that. You tell the people that are currently in those administrative positions at Sohegan that those positions are going to be targeted. You should expect them to be real unhappy about that. And the voters may still say it's not enough, not fast enough, not enough money, whatever. I don't know what the solution is. I think the school boards, both of them, may be in an insoluble problem. I just don't know how they're going to convince the voters. You know, we talked about how protecting your home values by keeping the school system at the top. Yeah, everybody will nod their head and do that, but that has a price. And above that price, they're not going to do it. They just won't. They'll sell out and leave. Let the incoming people worry about it. So, I mean, it's a serious political problem, and the people who ran for the boards, for better or worse, need to figure out what they're going to do about it. I'm sorry if that's not what you're hoping to hear, but I think that's the truth. I've talked to enough voters who, after I filled them in on where this is going, were horrified and appalled. So, I mean, the presentation is nice. I think it adequately explains what you're trying to do. It's a little light on the economic consequences of not doing it, on cost-benefit analyses of building new facilities versus trying to limp along for a few more years with what we got. I know we talked about that. I know some work was done on it, but I didn't see it in the presentation. At some point, you got to talk numbers, not show pretty pictures of design buildings. And cost-benefit is the thing you're going to have to do. School boards could use that from somewhere. This committee, if it can put this stuff together and arm the school boards with it, might just stiffen their spines enough to have them go out and start asking, even if it takes 2 or 3 cycles to get the money. If you never ask, you never get it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think out of everything you just said, John, and thank you so much for your chiming in. I know it's appreciated. And a lot of what you said, most of us here can't control. We are volunteers with kids in the school who have seen that they are in desperate need. So we're trying to work with what we have in front of us. So I think the cost benefit analysis piece is something this committee can and should control. And that's a really valid a valid
Well, I
thing
think
that
it's
we,
fair.
that we,
I think it's fair for the volunteers on this committee to ask the school boards, what is the next step and what would you like us to do to help with that? I think the cost benefit stuff can be done by this committee better than by the school boards, but for the rest, it's like, what information do you want? What tools would you like us to put together for you? I mean, how do we
Yep.
move this thing forward?
Yep.
And then we have to talk about it and figure out an answer.
Yep.
And it may not have the answer in the same session you ask the question.
yeah, no, I agree. And it is a lot of money, and I've heard from folks who support it in spite of that because they are directly impacted with young families in the schools. And then I've talked to other folks who, like you, are like, what, are you crazy? I can't do this. So it's definitely not, I think we're at a place where, to your point about more than one cycle, it may be more than one cycle, but the need's not going away, right? Like,
Correct.
like it's not, the buildings aren't getting any younger, the systems aren't getting, and we're going to be spending money on them one way or another, right? I mean,
Well, I mean, we have
and
a,
that's the quandary that we're in. That's the part where it's like, at some point, whether your kids are in the school or not, we can't have public facilities that are,
well,
not meeting the needs.
we've already got some of the highest people per classroom ratios in the state. That's not going to get better if we don't address the problem.
Right.
People are still moving here because we are exemplary at doing special ed, even though the cost of special ed is 100% borne by the taxpayers. There's virtually nothing useful coming out of Concord or out of Washington. That's the thing, we could talk to our incoming representatives and our remaining senator about trying to bring up in Concord to see if we can't get some kind of a program put in place where, say, the top, I'm making these numbers up, but let's say the top 10% of the school systems in dealing with special ed get a bonus of $4,000 per pupil from the state. I mean, that would have a couple of effects. One is people that are in the top would be getting some tax relief, and second of all, if you're at 11 or 12% and the top 10% gets money, would not that motivate you to make your program better and move you into the top 10% to make you eligible for money? So I mean, there are programs that can be designed, and then they have to get passed, of course. But if that is part of our problem at both Sohegan and Amherst, is that we've got a disproportionate share of special ed students because we do such a good job. People come here for that purpose. Let's see if we can find some way to shift some of that burden off the taxpayers and onto either the state or the feds. I have no idea how to do that.
Me neither.
Do it.
Having our reps do some kind of legislation to at least start talking about it would seem to be a good first step. So it may be that a presentation to the reps would be a useful thing to do. Again, the school boards have to ask you to do that and be willing to do that because they probably need to be in the room with them at the same time. But I mean, outside of the Amherst teachers contract and the double overhead at Sohegan, we're not going to be turning away special ed students. So trying to find a different source of funding than the taxpayers would allow us to reduce our cost per pupil by that alone. So again, that's not exactly in this group's charter, but if we want to talk about how we get costs down without sacrificing quality, one of the ways is to find a supplemental source of income that isn't the taxpayers, at least the local taxpayers.
John, as a selectman, John, that's one of the best things to do is encourage commercial real estate development in town because that's helps every taxpayer by spreading out the tax burden. What does that
Indeed,
look
it
like
does.
on the side of things?
Commercial development is separate from industrial. We have an industrial zone. I can pull meeting minutes from 30, 40 years ago where the selectmen were talking about trying to lure industry into our industrial zone. Problems are we don't have sewage and we don't have gas. So it's really hard to get much industry in there without the two of those. And if we could, it happens to be sitting on one of the biggest aquifers in the area. So any kind of industry that has pollution problems is not welcome on that industrial site. Commercial, we've tried to get commercial. The most successful commercial that we've seen in many recent years is LaBelle Winery. And that was driven by Amy LaBelle. And it's a very big success, but it's not. I mean, they plan to expand as soon as they get the money to do it. But, you know, we only need one winery in town, as far as I know. I mean, maybe we could use a brewery, but commercial development has to have a reason to come here. And we're off the beaten path. We are not on major interstates. You know, we had a distribution center for FW Web, and they moved it to a location closer to the main highways. So, I mean, as a industrial or commercial place, Amherst is not at the top of the list. You know, we've talked about doing TIF zones and doing other things to try and incentivize people to come here with their businesses. But even if we succeed, all we get is the tax revenue from the real estate. We don't tax their business revenue. We don't tax the income of the people that work there. All we get is the increased value of the property. So it's a very indirect way to try and get a whole bunch of money into the town. We're trying it. I mean, we've asked the last 4 community development directors to focus on that and tell us what we need to do, both legislatively and regulation and zoning wise and so on. And we keep trying, but like I say, I can go back 40 years at least in the minutes of the selectmen's meetings and see selectmen talking about trying to bring more business in here so that we can take the burden off the residents. You know, what we've got is the best that we were able to do. So, you know, we got a Walmart and a Lowe's, and that's nice, but what more do we need? We want to try and move Home Depot from Merrimack over to here. And we could try. But you know, what kinds of businesses should we try to encourage to come here? And why would they come here as opposed to Milford or Bedford or someplace like that? So it's a difficult problem. We can't really lure industry here because we don't have a good place for them. And commercial, we're in competition with our neighbors who also want that same revenue for that same reason. So we're trying.
I think who we do lure here, though, are families, past and present, who want to raise their children in a semi-rural area and want to have good schools for their kids.
Right.
I think those are the people who we are really trying, not even trying, but I think that is what Amherst always has been.
Well,
You know,
they're redoing the master plan starting this year, probably finishing it next year sometime. I think that is a reasonable objective, and people who think that's what we should have in the master plan when it's done might want to consider giving input either through the surveys or by showing up to the meetings or so on. But I mean, again, we want those type of people, but again, they just have to carry the tax burden when they get here. So the special ed problem, the teacher's contract problem, and the double overhead problem at Sohegan, as well as the not ramping staff down as the pupils went down, are the main, to me, pressure points. And previous boards have looked at them and flinched. So I can make myself unpopular by suggesting all the same things to the school boards, but I don't have to do it. So I'm not sure they're going to care. Other than as a taxpayer, and you know, I'll be happy to talk to them as a taxpayer.
John,
I don't know how you're going to do this.
John, do you think some of the points that we've been trying to make about keeping a level tax rate and trying to consolidate the schools to reduce overhead and things like energy consumption and, you know, having multiple kitchens, multiple buildings, do you think that's definitely something that can come from JFAC that's well within our wheelhouse. Do you think we need to go expand upon that further for each of the school board meetings?
Well, I think you can bring a list of things that you could work on into the school board meetings. There'd be a lot less time and effort than actually doing the work and then being told, well, we really don't need this. So, I mean, a list of things that we should be quantifiable and, you know, saving money. Okay, from Adam's list of projects for the buildings that we're talking about, either abandoning or completely redoing, you know, it should be possible to go through that list and identify maintenance costs that won't need to be incurred, but not enough to offset the cost of building a new building. But still, I mean, at some point, it's got to come down to numbers, because at some point, the school boards have to show numbers to the public that make sense. So I put together a list of things that you could work on, and that sounds like a thing that is well within the current charter of this group. Yeah, but telling Amherst they need to work on their teacher's contract, that's not exactly the wheelhouse of this group. If Adam wants to pass that on, he's certainly in a position to do so. Since he works for them, they may not appreciate that counsel.
Well,
So,
and it's, I think too, it's about the lens you put on it, right? I mean, you said the special ed problem, but I would guess that all these families that we're attracting who really recognize that we have a stellar and exemplary special ed program wouldn't call it a problem, right?
mhm.
I mean, we have a space issue that's caused because we have such a great program that's attracting families,
Right.
and that program takes space.
Well, not to be unkind, but the decision to bring it back in-house also contributed to the space problem because you need physical space in order to do that in-house.
Well, it's interesting because I agree with you on that argument, but I was looking back through enrollment numbers, and I think our enrollment numbers were really high, then they dipped really low, and I don't know the year that decision was made, but I was curious how that decision and the lower enrollment numbers dovetailed, right? Because at the time, it appears to me that there potentially was space in the buildings, and then as we started to go back up again, that
Well-
started becoming a problem. But I wasn't, that was before my time and my
Yeah.
enrollment.
It was before Adam's time too, but I was an outsider watching the problem happen, so I'm not sure that I have more than an average taxpayer's view into it.
Sure.
But people don't seem to believe, or don't want to believe, which is almost the same thing, that the enrollment is likely to go up in the future. So unless there's some data to suggest that 3-5 years from now, you'll have a substantially larger population in one or both of the school systems, nobody's going to be interested in getting in front of a problem that may not happen.
I think the problem exists already, though. I don't think it's if we grow more, the problem is here with the numbers we have today.
Right.
Also with the class sizes, because of the
Oh.
class sizes that we're at, when you were mentioning that we're like some of the highest in the state,
Yes.
trying to lower those is really where we see our large classes, which makes us feel like we're already cramped when you want to move those kids into another room and you don't have a room for them.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you have kids in school, you're probably feeling that problem because your kids come home and tell you all about it. If you're retired or you don't have kids currently in the school system, being asked to pay an extra $1,000, $1,500, maybe $2,000, depending on how expensive your house is a year, to solve a problem that isn't yours is a very hard sell. I mean, people are only willing to spend so much money to protect the current value of their real estate. At some point, it's better to keep that money in your pocket as opposed to giving it out in taxes and then let whatever impact the schools have on your house just happen. So it may be a multi-year project to sell this to the voters. If you don't start, you're never going to get it sold. And without actual numbers, like cost benefit numbers, even if they're approximate, even if they have questionable sourcing, we kind of look sort of like this town, and this is what this town experienced. Okay, that's anecdotal, but
Yeah.
it's better than having nothing. But again, that requires research and effort. This is a volunteer group, and without knowing that the school boards want that information, there's no point in spending your time and effort doing it.
Yeah, no, I think
I
that's
think it is.
really, yeah, I think clearly that's an area that we can expand upon and put together. Speaking as a board member, that's certainly something that I would want to have. So we should certainly drill down on that and provide that to the individual boards.
Yep. Roger, Adam, and I are connected on our current operating costs and working on what it's going to look like with the new buildings. That we'll have some more information about that.
Great, that's helpful. Okay, good. All
That'll
right.
be a necessary piece of the puzzle.
Yep. Thanks so much for your feedback, John. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but appreciate it. And yeah, our task is to present, the information that, all the information that we've gathered on the existing conditions and a recommendation to the boards, and it's really up to them whether to put it forth, and it's up to them to determine if they think they need to make some structural changes to their budgets and their operations. And that's not really, I know I'm a board member, but that's not I'm not represented as, I'm not going to speak for the board
Right.
on what the boards will or will not decide to do. So,
So at the moment, the boards own a problem. They have their own problems, and most of them are space related, at least the ones we're talking about. If they reject your recommendation and they gasp and clutch their chest at the price tag, okay, what are they going to do with the problem? Because they didn't give you the problem, they still own the problem. And doing nothing is a kick the can down the road strategy, but at some point, you're at the end of the road.
right. Yep.
So.
So, yep. So we will, yeah, we will continue with our charge, and then should the boards decide to move along, then we will certainly support that effort and come up with a plan for to how to do that. So,
you know what you need for cost benefit analyses. You may be able to find external consulting that can actually do that, but you need to know what you want before you go out talking to consultants, because they'll be happy to take your money and produce all kinds of stuff.
yeah, I don't think we were
We
looking.
don't have any money.
No, we weren't looking to outsource that. So I think we have enough talented folks in our community, I think, to be able to get something reasonable put together. And if the boards want something, more in depth, then we can certainly take a look at that. But
Well, using local community members is a good idea because it keeps the cost down, and also it'll start socializing into the community what the issues are and why this is the right solution.
yeah,
That's part of your communications effort as well as put some numbers together. Thing.
yep. All right. So let's see. Just looking at my agenda, I feel like we've covered just about everything except, Shannon, did you want to talk at all about the website?
I can briefly talk about it.
Yeah.
Tim and Christine have been working on it. Tim, after watching our presentation, was like, wow, there's a lot of information. I want to rework the menu so that it allows for us to store that information. So we're really close. I'll be touching base with him probably tomorrow or later in the week. I would share it with you, but he's still
Oh, it's
working.
okay.
But he's changed some tabs where now there's just a financial piece tab, financial impact tab, and then there's some drop downs where you can drill down and ask different questions. And then the Google sheet that you all have that we're working on right now with the FAQs, that will pull that into the frequently asked questions. So then we're meeting with Lance and Ann next week to talk about a virtual toolkit. When we did the community survey, we received around 300 email addresses of folks who wanted to remain engaged, let us know what's happening. We want to circle back to those folks. So we'd like to have a nice toolkit that kind of shares all of this.
Okay, great. No, I know it's been a ton of work, and
well, it's not, we just want to get it right before we push it out there.
Yeah.
I think putting something out there that's incomplete, that doesn't have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, doesn't really serve the community. We want to be able to answer all their questions.
Yep.
In a concise and straightforward manner. So we're getting there.
Good. Okay. So I guess circling back to the original intent of our meeting to, how do we want to go about making any revisions to the presentation for Tuesday? And do we want to kind of follow the same format with presenters and maybe cull the slides down, or what are your thoughts on that?
So I started just playing with the deck at home just to kind of get an idea of what it would look like. We pull out some of the slides. I can show you if you want to look at it now, or I can send it to you. I felt like the order worked well, and we'll be taking a lot off the front end in terms of the time. I'm not going to walk through the timeline and events and all of that.
Right. Okay.
So,
and then what about and Adam, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on creating a cost benefit analysis and how, should we have something rough for them for next week? Are we capable of pulling that off and then digging deeper later, or what do you think? And
Feels a little
Lance too.
Feels a little premature to me. I'm afraid of promising something that we can't deliver. We've not done any energy modeling yet, so we really can't do like the efficiency side of things.
Mhm.
One thing that we've not discussed with this group yet is when we, to John's earlier point, that when we expand the school, we'll need to hire a bunch of teachers to fill those classrooms. And I would say not necessarily. We have an inordinate number of additional professional staff in the Amherst in particular, that we have to hire to provide additional push in or pull out services for students because of our large class size. Like if you look at our model right now, we've spread out our students between in-person and remote. We have much lower class sizes now. We don't need as many of the interventionists and other supports because of that. So that's an analysis that needs to be done at some point.
Mhm.
So I don't think we should try to do something for next week because I know I'm probably not going to have the ability to do it well before then. So I'd be afraid of presenting something that's ends up being wrong in the future. That's my thought.
Lance, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, we've just started that. We started assessing costs of the kick the can option. And I put a lot of stuff down there. I think fleshing that out more, I mean, that's your cost avoidance information. Because I mean, I put down, we're going to plan to start renting portable temporary classrooms, in banks of 10. And, I don't want to say that's what we're going to do unless the school board says that's what we're going to do.
Okay.
Like Adam said, I think
I hear
there'll
you.
be a little bit of time to work with Adam and Adam with the school board, say, am I telling the truth here? Or am I saying that we're going to definitely rent portable classrooms in 3 years?
So
or
I'm
not.
sorry, Lance, to interrupt, but I feel like part of our charge though was to present the school board with options. So if this option of building a new school is not one that they're willing to move forward with, then what is the backup option and what does that cost? I think that has to happen. I think residents have to understand that as well. We can't ignore the problem. So we have an understanding with our capital maintenance plan of what it costs to maintain our existing building status quo. We also know that our status quo is not working. So we have to do something to remedy that. What is that remedy if we don't build a new building, and what does it cost? I do feel like that is on, I thought that was part of what this whole process would include. So, and when I'm asked that by my neighbors and fellow community members, I would like to be able, as someone invested in this committee, to answer them. And right now we're not all the way there. So maybe next week is a little short. I don't know, but I feel like we need that. I don't feel like it's like we've fully met our charge if we can't present that. And if everyone else has a different understanding, then tell me I'm crazy. But I thought that was, I feel like that's important.
I agree with you, Shannon, because I think if the board puts this forward, I think we're going to have some voters in town who are going to say, I want to support it, but what happens if I don't support it? Like, what is the backup plan? What's the best alternative, right? And I think you're right. I don't think the board is ready to know what their alternative is. I think they think we know what the alternative is.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, we can push it to them, but we don't want to kick the can down the road. So
I think we have most of the answers we need within the master planning effort. Between our report and the on-site insight reports, you have a lot of information that here's stuff that needs to be fixed over the next several years. I think the only part that just needs to be fleshed out is the staffing side of it and the portable classroom side. When do you do this and where? And we've started assigning cost to that. I think we just gotta, double check the numbers on those, that are we estimating the right amount? Because I think we have
Okay.
really good numbers on just.
So how are we going to get that done? Who's going to do it and when?
Fair question. I'm just trying to be realistic with what I've got going on right now. So
know.
If I
What do you
can-
mean, Adam? What, you're busy? What?
So I can, I'm just trying to think when I just want to not promise you guys something I can't do. So I'm thinking, looking at my schedule, like I literally at this point have to block a schedule of time to do stuff like this. So, oh, my next Wednesday calendar is, it's a holiday. I was like, why is there a
And it's
huge
2
gap
days
in my,
after the board meeting.
why is there a huge gap in my schedule?
Well, does
I
it, I
might-
mean, Adam, I don't know that it has to be you. Like, is there somebody, like,
Right.
you got a lot on your plate. I'm not,
Yeah,
like,
no, it's kind of me right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I might be able to take a pass at things tomorrow, but what specifically, what question are we trying to answer? Because when you mention cost benefit analysis, that means 10 different things to different
It
people.
does.
So what
Yeah.
specifically are you guys looking to answer?
So one way to look at it, in my opinion, is to say, if we don't do this, here are the current costs for operating our building. And here are the costs from all of our on-site, in-site, capital maintenance, those things that are coming down the pike in the next 5 years. This is how much the total is going to cost you. You're going to see that as a taxpayer. That's just one that I think we should.
What we're going to spend to maintain our current facilities and
Right.
with major projects to HVAC and et cetera.
With the understanding that your class sizes stay the same. Right? I think we do.
Got it.
And we have that data.
well, and then I think also to provide and it does, I don't know how, what it would cost to do portables. Because at some point, if the boards decide that that it's not acceptable to continue having some of the largest class sizes in the state, and we don't do something to augment our facilities in a meaningful way, portables are on the horizon. So
Yeah, and that's a great way to. So I remember at one point we looked into portables, and the cost of portables to buy and install was something like $110 a square foot, when the cost to build something was like at the time $250 a square foot. So like buying something for temporary purposes
Right.
costs almost half as much as the permanent solution, right? That kind of thing, right?
yeah, so if we could get just some real numbers around that, and maybe Lance, you have some insight into that. But to me, and these are questions that I had, community members ask me the morning after our presentation, like, oh, I know the need, but I really need more, and this is what I need. And that specifically was a question that I was like, I know, I hear you, but I don't have a solid answer. And I felt kind of like, oh, we should know that.
So given that the school board is already committed to getting to the class sizes that they've committed to, I would think that, saying, okay, in the next 10 years, we're going to hit the targets that the school board set. And here's how we do it with this many portables at this site, this many portables at that site. The big number is just putting together what are the cost of portables to rent versus buy, and just say, hey, you know what, we're trying to avoid doing this, but sooner or later, we either have the highest class size in the state and we start to, lack our education quality, or we do what the school board is already committed to doing and say, we're going to solve this in the next 10 years. And without a building, without a bond means you're going to do it annual operating budget, right? I mean, you're going to install portables under your operating budget because
While you're maintaining these facilities.
That are-
we said no to a bond.
And at some point,
No
those
problem.
classrooms at Wilkins I think we also forget to mention sometimes that 4 of our classrooms at Wilkins are in existing portables that are at their end of life.
Right.
So we're gonna be down 4 classrooms at some point and need to either replace those portables or those aren't forever buildings. We know that, right? So, so yeah, did that answer your question, Adam?
Yeah, so the 3 questions if we don't do this, here's what it's going to cost. Here's what we're going to spend in capital maintenance over the next 10 years with the understanding that class size stays the same. Second, what is the cost for the use of portables if we wanted to hit our class size targets that we've set over the next 10 years? And what is the cost to replace the 4 portables at Clark Wilkins once those become officially end of life?
Yes,
Those,
yes.
okay.
So we will need to update the kick the can based on those numbers. The kick the can cost that I had put together included, it assumed 20 years, and it assumed we would address everything in the on-site insight reports that we would also do. I have a listing. I'll share that with Adam. I probably already have. And it did assume that within the next 20 years, you're gonna have portable. I mean, I just didn't see any way around it.
Yeah.
You know, portable classrooms. I had to find a company that would actually do 10 classroom portables, not the
I was really confused when I saw that. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
there's a thing, that's a thing, 10 portables?
It's probably 20 or 30 units that are stacked together, right? Double loaded corridors. Yeah.
It's a double loaded corridor, has 2 bathrooms and an office in it. And yeah, it's,
Wow.
I mean, they're not cheap either. I mean,
Huh.
but if you think about having 4 classroom portables, you're going to have, what, you're going to have 10 of them out there?
Sure, right.
You're going to have a park, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so great. So you guys are going to work on that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then Shannon, maybe you and I, and if Victoria wants to join in too, can do something this weekend
Sure.
over Zoom and
Yeah.
refine the deck.
Yeah. Yeah,
That work?
that works for me.
If you
Okay.
guys want to bounce it back and forth with me, I'm happy to help. I think-
Okay,
I think
thanks,
most of
Lance. I know, I appreciate you getting back to us on the weekend. That's the only time I can find a block of time, so.
It's in COVID land. I don't think there are weekends.
It's
There
like
should be.
Groundhog Day.
It's a
Yeah.
blur.
I know.
I think it sounds like we're mostly doing reduction, but
Yeah,
if you're missing information and you need it, let me know. I'm always available. So
I think just this cost stuff that we'll
Yep.
throw in there, so, okay.
And then my other question, what I had started doing, Amy, on the deck was some of the questions that are in the Google Sheet that Adam's already answered. I was incorporating those into the deck. Should I be doing that?
Sure, I think that's great.
And
Yep.
Adam, is there more to come on any of those that, like, if there are any of those that you've already answered that you're like, wait, that wasn't a complete, or I can share it with you.
Well, I know there was one question I didn't answer because it took maybe, is it the same question we just talked about? Maybe
I think so.
okay.
Yeah.
I just don't remember. I was at my first email I wrote was, I don't have time to answer these questions. I'll try to answer what I can quickly. And then I realized I answered all of them except for
You did.
one. I was like, well,
Yeah.
this isn't so bad, actually. I did more than I thought I was
Yeah.
going to be able to do in 15 minutes. So
Did you already grab those, Shannon, and put them in the
I-
Google Sheet?
I did. Oh,
Oh,
no, I
thank-
haven't put them in the Google. No, they're
Okay.
not in the, I can, but I haven't.
I can do that too, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay,
Going
I
back
make
to
a
the
sug-
question of portables.
Sure.
If it's 110 per square foot versus 250 for the permanent solution. Well, the permanent solution is a building that lasts 60 years plus. How long is the life of a portable? In other words, if they're end of life after 15 years, you'll have to do not 1 but 4 replacements of portables.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
don't shortchange yourself on kick the can down the road thing. It's going to cost money too.
Thank
that's a
you.
good point,
Yeah,
John.
that's a great point.
Can I make oh, go ahead, Lance.
There's a really good study. California Department of Education years ago did a large study because across the state they had portable construction. And they did a really in-depth evaluation of the quality of education kids are getting in a portable construction versus in permanent construction and the costs. I'll pull some of the data because I've reviewed the study before for other districts, but it had a lot of information about what is the life cycle of a portable, what are the energy costs when it starts to break down. And it also noted the education value that it's not the same, that they're not getting, at least California found they were not getting the same test results out of kids in the same progress when they're in a portable construction versus, permanent build construction. But I'll pull the study.
And then can I make a PR suggestion to this group? I know this, I'm not sure this is the right thing, but successful bond votes happen when a school district or school board are able to mobilize people into their own neighborhoods to do the work. And so I'd suggest that we come up with a plan to, if you're willing to volunteer to host people, I'm realizing I'm talking into the COVID world now as I say that, but if you're willing to host even a virtual coffee with your neighbors, we'll be willing to train you, give you the materials, all of that. I think our success would hinge on having 30, 40, 50 of those. You guys are smiling. Is this what you guys are already doing?
Yeah, this is a virtual toolkit we're asking Lance and Ann to help us with. That's kind of
Awesome.
where that's
Sorry I
going.
missed that, but I was going to say that's the way to do this, is to get the volunteers to talk to their neighbors. And
Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
To
We wish
jump
it
on-
wasn't over Zoom, but yes.
Yeah.
To jump on that too
the
is
idea.
at my last district, we actually had the architect help with is we did just like display boards and we set them up at just the local businesses. Just as far as it here, it would be like Moulton's, the library, Shaw's, Walmart, if they would allow us. And it's just like kind of 10 items of why we're doing it, and then just the proposal of the project on one board, and it just provides information to everyone as they're kind of walking by.
Where were you before, Roger?
The greater Boston area.
No, those are great ideas, and that we're definitely, that's the trajectory that we're on. Some of these things, getting these things fleshed out first, so that we make sure what we're putting out there to folks is accurate and that we can answer their questions, and also getting through the board presentations first, and then.
Yeah.
But we are working towards that,
Shannon's a pro at this, so
hardly.
we're in good hands. All right, so are we good? I feel like we have a good plan. Anything else for anyone?
Well, so Brian's not on here, so I guess we just need to reach out to him
Yeah.
to make sure his schedule is available.
Yeah, we'll
Or
loop
that
him
he's
in.
available Monday. I think there's some other meetings going on in town tonight.
Yeah, there are.
And if not, figure out, who's gonna do his bit.
Yeah. Yep.
Great.
All right, everybody.
Good.
Thank you. Hopefully,
Thank you all.
everyone will get a good night's sleep tonight.
We'll see.
All right. Thank you.
Night.
See you
Bye,
guys.
Bye,
everyone.